Intercept has found out that one of the contributors who has been pushing for regime change in Iran on various news publications here in the United States is actually not a real person. In fact, it is a persona that's being manipulated by members of the so-called MEK. And this is a group that wants to topple the regime in Iran. And they're pushing for this regime change war that the Trump administration appears to be in favor of as well. In fact, the Trump administration has specifically cited this very writer for its decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. So according to The Intercept, Heshmat Alavi appears not to exist. This is the contributor, and he is published, or this name has been published in Forbes several times. Alavi's persona is a propaganda operation run by the Iranian opposition group, the MEK, which I mentioned earlier, which is known by the initials MEK. Now, Alvani is a persona run by a team of people from the political wing of the MEK. They write whatever they are directed by their commanders and use this name to place articles in the press. This is not and has never been a real person. So, you guys, this has been published. These pieces have been published in Forbes and in various other news organizations. Where's the vetting? I mean, I thought there was vetting that takes place when a contributor contributes his or her work to these, Forbes, to these big name print organizations. But I guess that's not what's happening.
So can I just say real quick on that?
No. Yes, you can.
So Forbes changed their model a little bit, and they allowed people to contribute from the outside, and that's part of why they were able to take advantage of that so much. This non-person wrote 61 different articles for Forbes just between April 2017 and April 2018, so just a 1 year period, let alone all other things he wrote for Forbes. So they get kind of hoodwinked. The Hill also in that category. But then there are others who are willing participants. So now the Daily Caller says, oh, we didn't know and we stopped publishing them later. But it helps their agenda. The Washington Free Beacon, that's a neoconservative site, puts up his propaganda. And it's very convenient for them. It's exactly what they want. It's what the Trump administration want. And they create this ecosystem where that literal fake news by a fake person gets promoted all the way up to actually affecting policy. So that's why it's super dangerous.
Right, this persona or this so-called person has also published articles in Saudi-owned publications, which, by the way, makes a lot of sense because Saudi Arabia is in a conflict with Iran, which is part of the reason why we see what's happening in Yemen today. And one other thing I wanted to note, let's go to graphic 28. The Intercept reached out to the editors at the outlets that had published these pieces over the past several years. None of the outlets were able to confirm they even spoke to this person. So they never even had an actual conversation before allowing this so-called person to publish or contribute pieces in these publications. And by the way, the MEK wants to topple the Iranian regime, right? So Cenk is right, the right-wing news organizations want that. And so they'll go ahead and print this stuff willy-nilly. But when it comes to so-called objective or neutral print publications, this is unacceptable. There should have been a better vetting process.
I wish we had maybe like the Washington bureau chief of the Intercept to talk about this.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, there you are. So, all right, Ryan, I don't know if you were involved in this piece at all. I saw this piece in the morning and I was like, this is an amazing story. And I called Anna, who produces the show. She's like, I'm on it already. I'd forgotten that you were gonna be on the show today. So, how did you guys first figure out that the person didn't exist in the first place?
Well, the defector that is mentioned in the story is, essential to this. The MEK has this extremely, I don't want to necessarily call it sophisticated, but expansive trolling network particularly on Twitter, aimed at influencing the conversation in the United States around decision makers, and I think there's a lot more to it. We're looking into some other avenues of this, whether or not some of it is actually being done by State Department funded organizations. And so, as an editor, it's like, wow, I actually hadn't thought to question whether or not the person who emailed me existed. So this is a new thing I'm going to have to put on the checklist of. I don't handle a ton of freelance work, so thankfully I know that the people that work for me do exist as human beings. But Forbes is, I think, an interesting situation here because people who don't, as you mentioned, they have a new model. People who haven't followed their evolution think of Forbes as this reputable, credible news outlet that covers the financial industry and is, generations old and of impeccable credibility, when in fact they've kind of turned part of their business into just anybody who wants to publish can kind of sneak their way in there. And so if you don't know that, you'd have to kind of be in the industry to know that. Then you see Forbes, and the Trump administration using this. So they and the Hill really need to check themselves because they're being used. If somebody wants to post something fake on Medium, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But you can't really use a Medium post to back up getting out of the Iran nuclear deal.
Right.
But even the Daily Caller is invited to the White House, not just under Trump administration, but Obama allowed them in. So this is again a bias in favor of the right wing that happens often in Washington. But I want to ask about one other thing, Ryan. So MEK was a terrorist organization. They were on our terrorist list all the way till 2012. They had killed people all the way up to 2001. And they're a wild radical cult, but all of a sudden they've become really legitimate by Washington standards. They give money to politicians. I'm not even clear on how a foreign group is giving money to guys like in the past John McCain and Bob Menendez, but they also have a lot of people on the right wing and left wing who go and give speeches and get a lot of money from MEK. So how in the world did this terrorist group that is led by a wild cult turn into this completely legitimized organization in Washington?
They put money in the meter. And some of the left-wing people were Howard Dean, Ed Rendell, those types of folks took extraordinary amounts of money to go on MSNBC or to give speeches. And then they can say, well, how can we be a terrorist organization when we have this guy who's not a terrorist? He's vouching for us. And it eventually worked. It got them off the terrorist list. And now, the Trump administration considers these, like you said, this cult-like organization who's holed up in Albania as some type of a rightful. It's not to praise the current Iranian regime, but as if these folks are going to have any popular support in Iran.
But Ryan, I don't think it's just money, because if a terrorist organization,
well, it's money, and they have the same enemies as we do.
Bingo, right? Because I was going to say, if a terrorist organization from Iran, but that was part of the government, not opposed to the government, came in, there's no amount of money that can get Howard Dean or the right wingers. I think Giuliani did speeches for them, et cetera. So they had really established figures on the left and the right, all saying, "Oh, this wonderful MEK. I'd love to take money from them and tell you how wonderful they are." Right? That needs a go-ahead. That needs a wink and a nod. And so I don't know that the reporting's been done on that, but it's in my mind, there's only two things that can give you enough of a wink and a nod for those guys to do this, and that's Israel or the CIA. And so, look, that's for further reporting, and I'm just speculating.
I think you're right, because they need, they were still on the terrorist watch list when some of this was going on, and so in order to take that money and not go to prison, you have to have some assurance from people in the right places that this is an okay direction to go.
Yeah, look, if my agent came to me and said, "Hey, Mujahideen al-Khalq, which is on the terrorist watch list, would like to pay you X amount of money to speak for them," like, no, not within a mile of close, right? But you would presume the Ed Rendells and the Republican leaders would be more careful, although I don't know about that, right? No, they would go and ask someone. And so who did they ask that told them, "Oh no, they're cool now, we're all good," right?
We're taking care of that terrorist thing, don't worry.
Yeah. So they had to have gotten the green light from somebody, because this ragtag group of random dudes who are almost wiped out and then all of a sudden get moved to Albania, get set up with a new headquarters, get these personas and trolls and bots and lots of money from somewhere, and then agitate towards war with Iran when they have no credibility within Iran at all. And by the way, that's also an Intercept story. They helped Iraq fight against Iran in what was a devastating, brutal war. They'll never be forgiven inside Iran for that. So this is a totally nonsense group. And then the neocons turn around and go, oh, the people of Iran really like MEK. Hilarious, ridiculous lie, right? But there's someone behind that lie. There's an agenda behind that lie. So don't I'm doing some speculation here. And I only list those two because they would have enough credibility in Washington to be able to give a green light. But until there's more reporting in, we don't quite yet know if there's another force behind MEK. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.